From easily and repeatedly falling into old selfish patterns, to fans thinking that Aiden deserves way better than her, these are times Carrie Bradshaw was the absolute worst. Starting with, well, the sheer indifference Carrie's usually capable of. Okay, so remember when And Just Like That started, and we were all waiting for Samantha to show up, but she never did? That had everyone thinking. And so when Carrie and Miranda start talking about her while walking, the audience was all ears. But honestly, it was hard to even watch because Carrie literally brought her up as though she'd been dead or something, which she's not. In fact, her reaction was prime GIF content. Her shrug just said so much. So here's how it unfolded. Carrie told Sam that keeping her on as her publicist just stopped making sense because of the way the book business was now, and turned out Sam, in turn, fired Carrie as her friend. Miranda added that Sam's pride probably took a hit, and Carrie said that she was still leaving her voicemails wanting to talk about it. Now, here's how this is peak Carrie selfishness. This is a woman who bullied Charlotte into lending her money, and Samantha wasn't the sort to rely on Carrie to make her money. She had it good before Bradshaw's book was even in the cards. So, all in all, it was really infuriating that Carrie would accuse one of her friends of taking advantage of her. After all, in the first movie, Carrie herself admitted that her friends had proved to be her salvation and meal ticket year after year. Next, let's talk about Carrie's reaction to the big emergency. So while she was off at a recital, Big had an unfortunate incident with his Peloton, and as she returns from that concert, he's still alive, and Carrie immediately runs to him. Now, she can't possibly have been thinking she could handle it. She needed to get 911 on the phone that very instant, but nope. Instead, she just cries and holds on to the guy, and watching it will have you holding your head in frustration. Because come on, Carrie, do something other than weep. Something that you're supposed to do in times of crisis. At least have help on the phone while you hold him. And turns out the frustration of the audience was right, because guess what? Vulture reported that a cardiologist shared that, had Carrie recovered and called for help after the initial shock, she could totally have saved Big. So maybe Peloton can't shoulder all the blame here, y'all. Now, if you think that's irritating to think about, there was also the Diwali incident. So, since And Just Like That is out to correct some of the past wrongs of the show, there's more diversity this time around. And I've got to admit, Sarita Chowdhury as Seema is a marvelous addition. She's Carrie's real estate agent, but also one of her closer friends apart from the girls. Now, Carrie's not the greatest friend out there, and a lot of people still remember that. Even with Seema, this side kinda emerges. For example, after Mr. Big's out of the picture, Bradshaw's out to navigate singlehood, and Seema is someone who encourages her, and in return, what does she get? A super condescending, "at least you're putting yourself out there," from Carrie. Aisha Harris talked about this with E. Alex Young, Kristen Meinzer, and Letitia Harris on Pop Culture Happy Hour from NPR. They also picked up on another one of its all about Carrie moments, when she totally invited herself to Seema's parents' Diwali. Young added that it was because Carrie just wanted to wear a sari, and Harris agreed that it was because Carrie had her eyes on the traditional Indian garment. Now it's bad enough to invite yourself and impose, but Seema was cool and said that Carrie wearing a sari would be cultural appreciation instead of cultural appropriation. Here's the funny thing though, Carrie didn't even wear a sari. She wore a lehenga. Moving on, let's address another major theme in the reboot, aging. Spoiler alert, Carrie didn't take it too well. Initially, she gets off on the wrong foot with Lizette, who recently moved into Bradshaw's brownstone building. So Carrie just yells at her new neighbor for being loud all throughout the night with her friends. Well, fair enough. No one likes to be disturbed, but then Carrie just wants to immediately make things right with the young girl. Why? Well, because she feels that Lizette is now what Carrie used to be with her friends around. But honestly, the desperation to get back into Lizette's good books is a bit much and shows a very bad reaction to aging, which is a totally natural phenomenon. Also, letting a youngster be super loud ain't gonna make you any younger. Now, Carrie might want to chase her old self, but some of the bad emerges from it too. Carrie versus Natasha. After Mr. Big passed away, something incredible came to light. He left his ex-wife Natasha $1 million. This rattles Carrie and causes her to go down a spiral where she's obsessively stalking and harassing her. Sound familiar? Because it's all been done before. Back in season 3 of Sex and the City, Big was married to Natasha, but since Carrie simply couldn't get over the guy, she began an affair with him. When Charlotte made her realize that Natasha was an actual person, and Carrie was ruining someone's life, only then did Carrie come to her senses and stopped seeing Big. But she continued to keep tabs on his wife, And when the so-called apology came, Natasha was in no mood of forgiving either of them. Anyway, in the reboot, Carrie again wants to confront Natasha. Miranda asks her what was Carrie's worst fear about Natasha and Big being in touch, and Carrie replies it could be one of two. Either Big regretted being with Carrie over his ex-wife, or Natasha was getting back at her by having an affair with Big. Now let me pause and say that all of that reeks of insecurity. Plus she did the same to Natasha, so maybe dial it down. Anyway, turns out Natasha didn't know about the money, and didn't even want it, so Carrie genuinely apologized, but only after being in the clear. If you think this was weird, buckle up for Carrie's talk with Miranda. So Carrie had to undergo surgery and was bedridden. She woke up and needed to go to the bathroom ASAP, but Shay and Miranda were absent. Yep, they were having, well, that moment in her kitchen. So Carrie had to tinkle in a bottle, but somehow, it ended up getting all over the bed. Now fair, maybe Miranda could have not engaged in an act like that right in Carrie's kitchen. But Carrie didn't stop from pulling punches either when she ultimately showed up. Carrie confronts Miranda and blames the accident on her. Now honestly, she could have put the bottle aside before getting back into bed, and maybe the mess could have been avoided. Okay, anyway, let that one slide. Still, Carrie says that she wishes she'd taken the entire bottle of sleeping pills so she could have been spared the scene. And then she also doesn't want Miranda changing her sheets. Instead, Carrie gets into lecture mode and with an air of self-righteousness asks Miranda why she's cheating on her husband. Now, given the whole Natasha and Big episode, Carrie could have held off on the judgment, but nope. The entire scene oozed hypocrisy. Then Miranda shares everything with Carrie and she does back off and understand. And then when Miranda wants to change her sheets again, Carrie gets right back on her high horse and tells her friend to look into her drinking problem. That's Carrie for you. Now let's look at one of the moments that Carrie fans didn't appreciate, her experience with a dating app. In the 7th episode of And Just Like That, Seema urges Carrie to get out there. She takes the advice and signs on to a dating app. And get this, after swiping through only 3 profiles, Carrie manages to match with the first contender she liked. Ugh. This didn't sit well with the fans because it showed an insanely unrealistic portrayal of dating apps. For many, it was one of Carrie's bad moments. Also, while talking about Bradshaw's romances, Season 2's trailer has the fans furious. So first look trailer showed that Carrie was all set to move past her grief. And guess who was the lucky guy? Aiden Shaw. In the teaser, Carrie's voiceover admitted that maybe not everything deserves to be left in the past. The snaps, however, sparked outrage among the fan base. One fan said that people rooting for the couple were sick in the head, and another said that Carrie never deserved Aiden for even a single second. This anti-Carrie moment is very strongly tied to how she treated Aiden in the past. Because think back, and all of their past interactions were a string of red flags left by Carrie. The guy was absolutely perfect, but still. They broke up, got together, and then broke up again. And Carrie cheated on the guy, ignored all his interests, and didn't even like living with him, even as he was slaving away to build her a perfect home. So from fans thinking that Aiden deserves way better than her, to easily falling into old selfish patterns, those were times Carrie Bradshaw was the absolute worst.